a visitar nuestra escuela. And we are here because we wanted to see the most special school in Santiago. So I want you to...
He went to South America for several reasons. The world has gotten to be a much smaller place. And so it is about ensuring that we know what's going on in the rest of the world. In Chile, the school systems have taken a page out of the Milton Friedman view of market capitalism.
In 1975, Chile's brutal dictator, Augusto Pinochet, met with Milton Friedman and requested a roadmap for Chile's government, which Friedman provided.
A group of people who had been trained at the University of Chicago in the Department of Economics, who came to be called the Chicago Boys, played a major role in designing and implementing the economic reforms.
The Chicago Boys reforms, conducted without public input, included slashing government services and creating a privatized educational system that remains in place today.
A competitive environment where there are private schools that get public monies and that have no real regulations versus public schools. And what we see in Chile is a real growing gap between rich and poor, and that the lack of equity has really hurt the movement towards an enduring middle class.
Sino que por la propia constitución política. Pinochet impone una nueva constitución política. La movilidad hacia la calidad va a estar dada por la competencia. Y el voucher va a ser el incentivo económico.
In Chile, 70% of private schools receive money from the government, which in the United States you would call a voucher, because they can spend more per student than public schools by charging families additional tuition and fees. This has led to an educational system that the OECD has said is the most stratified in the world.
Since the voucher system was implemented, the number of private voucher schools that charge tuition has increased dramatically. 80% of Chile's most advantaged quarter of students attend privately managed schools, compared to 38% of Chile's least advantaged quarter. And only 15% of those with families earning less than 100,000 pesos monthly attend private schools. So the theory behind Chile's educational system can be boiled down to one word: choice. Parents will always choose the best school for their children, be it private or public. But in reality, it is not so simple. Poorer neighborhoods do not have many options. Poorer parents can't afford the transportation. And additional tuition that voucher schools charge puts it out of reach for many.
I don't have enough money to pay for private school. They ask for money for a lot of things. Therefore, I can't send them to a school like that. And I'm also not with the father, so I don't have enough money, especially here in Chile.
Y aquí, en Chile no. Preferiría igual la privada.
I prefer private school because the education is better. But right now I have to choose public.
Hay que endeudarse, hay que pedir crédito.
To go to private school, you have to get a loan. With the debt I already have from the house and work expenses, it's hard to take out more money to pay for private school.
Para poder llevar una escuela privada.
No, yo sé.
Yo estudié en una escuela de acá cerca, en el León Prado.
There is a private school nearby, and I wanted Martin to go there. He took the test and sadly didn't get in. So our second option was a school far away.
Era el Colegio Santa Cruz. Nuestro aporte más o menos va por el orden de los 50,000 pesos.
We have to pay 50,000 pesos per month, and even more. In reality, it's a lot, and it's difficult. But you know you have to pay for education. We always knew since Martin was born, education would be an expense, like our other daily expenses.
My husband's Chilean. Our daughter, she's only 3, and I would be very happy just to keep her in a preschool or play school until I learn more about her learning style and her strengths and weaknesses, and then apply to elementary school later on. But that's not the way the system works here. They really want to lock you in pretty much from age 3 or 4 on. And it's probably the one deal breaker about being here. My husband has a good job here, but sometimes we think about leaving, and it's because of school choices. We just feel it's a very intense, competitive, and expensive system. And it goes beyond the money. I just don't like the idea of education being on such a business model here.
A mí me gustaría que Martín tuviera la posibilidad y bueno, y que la
I would like Martin and all kids to have access to a free, good quality education everywhere, so that our son could go somewhere closer to where we live. The government should take charge of public education, of all education. It's the responsibility of the government, but they're not doing it.
One of the legacies from Pinochet is a constitution that practically guarantees gridlock in the legislature, and with many politicians profiting directly from privatized education, even though 80% of the people prefer a public system, the government has been unable to make changes.
If you're going to have a voucher scheme, in the long run, you are going to be unable to change the socioeconomic conditions of students. And since you have an extremely close relationship between socioeconomic situation of the parents and the performance of students.
You wanted to actually change this, but there was no political infrastructure for you to be able to change both the voucher system as well as the diffusion of money to private schools.
Yeah, exactly. You understand very well that we have a very unusual electoral system.
Yes, we've heard.
The fact was that we never had majority in parliament to change the way to allocate resources.
Not only do public schools have less to spend per student, the way compensation is calculated puts them at a further disadvantage. Funding is determined not by enrollment, but average attendance.
Si faltan mucho clases los niños, el sostenedor recibe menos subvención.
If kids miss a lot of classes, then their school will receive less funding. Where are the kids missing most classes? In the poor areas, because they get sick easier, they don't have clothes for the winter, they take on family obligations or work, and so the population that needs it the most, because of this model, is hurt the most.
A student who has family support arrives with all his materials, his notebooks, his completed homework assignments. Our reality here is very different. Not in all students, but in many, the family support just is not there.
What I like the best is being able to contribute, to help the girls overcome their challenging social situations. The children here are at a lower educational level compared to the children who have a lot of resources. At private schools, they have different classes for different levels. In our school, everyone is taught at the same level, no matter how they are performing. And the quality of resources and textbooks that they send us is not the best, especially compared to the private schools.
Hay dos amenazas que están muy latentes.
There are two existential threats to public education in Chile. First, it is at risk of disappearing completely because of privatization. Secondly, there is a devaluation of teachers as professionals.
Necesitamos como profesores, como bien dicen mis compañeras, el tiempo, el respeto por nuestro trabajo. En realidad que se nos reconozca el trabajo que nosotros hacemos porque no es fácil y cada día es más complicado trabajar con los niños.
We have to work together to lift up education across the world, public education across the world.
In Chile, public school teachers are chronically underpaid and unsupported, leading to high turnover.
Not all teachers here are even under a contract. They could be fired at any moment. To keep good teachers, the government needs to make sure that we feel stable in our jobs.
I have a lot of friends who are teachers that have left to start their own businesses to make more money. Although this is a wonderful profession, with the heartwarming affirmation that you get when you see that children have learned something, we all have our families and bills and expenses we have to pay for.
We are here as teachers because we are demanding public education for all children and youth of Chile. The government believes education is a consumer good, but we believe it is a right.
There's a real solidarity between the teacher unions here and the students. We were very heartened by that. And I think that's a very important movement, demanding universal access.
With college loan debt often reaching $60,000 upon graduation, students have taken to the streets to protest profiteering in education and demand free public education for all students. For almost 2 years, students have staged regular protests and marches, including an attention-getting reenactment of Thriller in front of the President's Palace, and a kiss-in protest.
Y esto nos da una oportunidad entonces de influir en las próximas elecciones y pensar en...
Vive en la sociedad y ve cómo ella funciona y eso te motiva a querer
We
cambiar.
live in this society, and we see every day the suffering and inequality that students have to face. And families suffer because they know they don't have any opportunities, and that motivates us to change the society we live in.
We are just honored that you have taken this up, not just at the university level, but also for all children.
Porque reproduce en primer lugar la segregación social y queremos que la educación...
Our current educational system reproduces segregation. We want education to be a way to create unity and greater mobility in our society.
We have some of the same battles. The Chilean school system is based on the direction that many of the so-called market reformers want to go in the United States, and it's not a pretty picture. The people who need the most get the least. The people who need the least get the most.
El sistema escolar chileno es exclusivo.
I think this is a sign of things to come potentially in the United States. You know, public education is something that we took for granted for years and years. I don't think we can be comfortable with that assumption.
En el caso chileno es dramático porque la privatización.
The Chilean case is dramatic because when privatization leads to stratification, education is no longer a tool that creates equality. Instead, it reproduces existing conditions. A child who is born poor will grow up poor and will continue to be poor.
Well, I think that since the year 1990, Chile have had an outstanding performance in economic terms. You have a lot of improvement in the quality of life of the people, but the distribution of income is unfair. Then I think that next to have a new agenda in the country in which the main subject will be the problem of equality, especially in education.
Our movement says that education needs to be guaranteed as a right, that profiteering must be eliminated, and we must make education free. The government needs to follow this new direction, follow the will of the people, so that the Chilean educational system can lead to success for all.